Welcome everybody. Thanks for taking the time, first of all, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend this webinar. Me and Lucas and Joachim are very grateful for that. And just to get things started, this presentation is going to be covering a case study between two companies, Simplify and Findify. And we'll be going over how the use of personalization and A/B testing can really sort of soup up your marketing efforts. And we'll be going through a specific case with you guys to show how the partnership works and the results that we had from that. First things first, my name is Keith Holland. I work at Simplify out of the Montreal office, and I am joined by, as I said, Lucas, who works out of Sweden, and Joachim, who is also out of Sweden. And I understand there probably some time change things going on here, so that's an extra thanks for attending for people who are having to, take the hour out of your day to take part in this. With that being said, let's get the show on the road.
Thank you, Keith. And yes, there's a bit of time change. It's 4 p.m. in the afternoon here in Stockholm, where both me and Joachim are located. I think it's morning for you guys, 9, 10-ish, something like that.
It's 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock. All right. So before we get into the actual case, I'm Lucas Rugvall. I've been working for Simplify for the last 7 years as a CRO specialist and sales executive. So kind of a couple of different hats, all tying into conversion rate optimization. So I've been doing the company for quite a long time. My kind of speciality has been optimizing e-commerce, which is what we're kind of going to be focusing on today. So yeah, I've been living and breathing A/B testing for the last 7 years, pretty much.
And a pleasure to be here. As mentioned, my name is Joachim, and I'm responsible for partnerships, sales, and marketing at Findify. I have a background in management consulting, and I love data, especially translating behavior into actionable insights. And I know this is a shared passion with Simplify, so looking forward to present our case here today.
Yeah, and that's kind of definitely the red thread between both Findify and Simplify, that the whole belief of letting data taking your decisions for you and trying to automate as much as possible and trust the data to kind of guide your business forward. Before we get into the case and that part, I wanted to go over kind of what we hope that you will learn. It is, I guess, up to us to make sure that you actually do so. But 3 points that we think you can take away from this webinar. So number one is using your data when optimizing e-commerce. You'll learn more about that and kind of how you can leverage your data in a kind of straight up, this is exactly, you could replicate what we've done in this case after the webinar in an easy fashion. So that's number one. Number two is how to use the power of personalization and how you can kind of use individual relevance in kind of playing a crucial role in driving conversion. And the third one is everybody loves case studies, right? So we'll be doing a live case of a fashion store, but we'll get into a little bit more specific of them. But the case, they generated 7% revenue uplift from implementing Findify, and we've statistically significantly tested this through an A/B test. And they also increased conversion rate by 6.7%. And what we're specifically going to be looking at is recommendations for e-commerce, like recommended products, and how you use that in a good manner, and site search is kind of a focus area. And also, we hope it's going to be fun. Also, before we kind of get into the rest of the presentation, please ask questions. If you have anything that kind of pops up during the webinar, it's always fun to kind of make it less of a monologue. I mean, we're 3 people here that can talk to each other, but we'd love to hear if you have anything that you don't understand or you want us to get in depth with. We'll end the webinar with kind of a 10-15-minute Q&A. So in the right panel or right-hand side of your screen in the GoToWebinar control panel, you've got a question possibility. So feel free to shoot out anything. Don't be afraid. And we'll do as many of them as possible when we get to the end of the webinar. So, some of you may not know us, so I thought I'd give you just a brief presentation. I'm not going to get super deep into it, but what is Simplify Conversion? We've been around as a company for about 20 years, currently somewhere around 110 employees, growing quite rapidly now. We've got offices in 6 countries. Headquarters is in Stockholm, but Keith from the Montreal office, that's also one of our larger offices. And what we do as a company is we offer a conversion platform, which gives you 6 different tools to optimize transactional websites, is what we usually call it, but it could be any type of website that hugely depends on your website as a source of leads or sales, or like e-commerce, typically loan providers, news sites, that type of stuff. Any company that has a kind of very important site as a part of their business. The modules that we focus primarily on is A/B testing and personalization. That's what most people come to us for, primarily A/B testing even. But we also offer a couple of different analysis modules as well. So heat maps, pop-ups, surveys, and recordings or visitor recordings are some of the other modules that we offer. And kind of the aim of the platform is to serve our clients a platform that can both analyze and act on the analysis by A/B testing and personalizing stuff that you found from the analysis. We also do run a CRO agency, or a conversion rate optimization agency, for those of you who are not super familiar with the abbreviation. So we offer both the kind of platform to do what we hope our clients want to do, A/B testing and etc. And also kind of all the resources associated with doing A/B testing can be hired from us. So if you're lacking web development, or you're having a tough time with your development, you can hire us for that. And for CRO strategies and such. So basically, if you want to do A/B testing, you can do it through us. Doesn't matter what your resources are. So that's kind of the short version about us.
Brilliant. And you'll see more about Findify when we get into what we actually been testing today. But in short, Findify is a tool for automatic merchandising and AI-driven personalization within search, categories, and recommendations. Since we were founded in 2014, the solution has so far been trusted by 1,800 merchants within a broad range of industries. And despite being founded in Sweden, we have since the start had over 60% of the clients in North America. So a pleasure to be here today, speaking mainly with North America. The technology per se is platform agnostic, but we work closely with the major platforms.
Nice. So A/B testing is going to be a core of everything we're going to be presenting today. So for some of you, this may be a bit of repetition, but I thought it'd be good to bring everybody up to the kind of the same speed, so we don't talk about stuff that some of you don't understand what it is. So I thought I'd explain what an A/B test is, kind of super basic. The methodology has been around for a long time. It's traditionally used a lot within medical studies. And the basic methodology is the same for the type of A/B testing we do, where we work with site design, functionality, layout, and let's say we have an idea for a better product page if we're in e-commerce. We basically design that new product page in our tool or any other tool, and then we let 50% of the traffic that arrives to the site see the original version, while 50% sees the new version, the hopefully better version. So A versus B, and then we measure whatever type of KPI we're interested in measuring. Traditionally for an e-commerce, it's oftentimes pure conversion rate, sales, or revenue, but it could be also clicks, or clicks on your search functionality, or usage of your filtering functionality, or anything you want to kind of see as desired behavior from your users.
Exactly. And the classic case of maybe seeing this in real life is every single time you go on Netflix and the tile looks a little bit different, or the description looks a little bit different. That's a classic case of seeing kind of that A/B testing in the wild in a way that you might see every day now that we're in this pandemic, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that phrasing, in the wild, out on the internet. Definitely. I mean, anytime you visit a good digital platform such as Facebook, Netflix, Uber, whatever, you are definitely a part of a bunch of different experiments. They wouldn't change anything without A/B testing it first. And the point of A/B testing is to secure that what we're doing has the desired effect, because oftentimes it's kind of hard to measure without an A/B test. So that's the methodology we're going to be using. And why is this important? I usually use this slide to kind of describe for me at least, the absurdity of how digital businesses are being driven today. Not everyone, a lot of people are doing A/B testing, but it's quite common for me to meet clients or potential clients that they're not really doing A/B testing, or at least not at a proper level. And I mean, when it comes to e-commerce, there are two basic ways of driving revenue, right? You can increase your traffic, or you can convert that traffic at a higher rate. So that's kind of the basics. There's of course other parameters you can work with, but these are the two primary pillars to increase your revenue. And if I were to ask a digital marketer that manages a PPC budget or a paid budget for ads, like what's your ROI from Google Shopping, or what's your ROI from Facebook ads and targeting, or whatever type of channel you're using, I'd say that the standard, like lowest level of data drivenness is quite high. Most marketers could answer that if I gave them 15-20 minutes to kind of extract a report. They could give me pretty detailed specifics for how their ROI is for different channels. Makes sense, right? I mean, I would want my marketers to know that. If we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, it makes sense to know how that actually converts. But when it comes to the conversion rate, which is basically 50% of how you can generate revenue, it's a lot of a different story for a lot of companies. Most of the companies that I work with spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in development to improve the user experience of the site on a yearly basis, or even on a monthly basis, depending on how big they are. But a lot of the stuff that you're releasing, like new designs, new functionality, new modules, whatever it may be that you're trying to improve on your site, it's not being tested, at least not at 100% rate. And oftentimes it's very, very difficult to do after analysis. So basically, you don't know what those hundreds of thousands of dollars within the conversion rate sphere are going to, or if it's actually working. You may be converting better than last month, but that could be from like 100 different reasons. If you haven't done an A/B test, you actually don't know if the functionality that you just released worked. So for me, that is mind-boggling. I just don't understand why not more people are actually doing it. So that's kind of the theme of why I think you should be testing at a higher rate. Also, I think this quote is really interesting. Google did a study a couple of years back now, I think it's like 2016-ish, where they estimate that around 70% of the changes you do to your website, we're talking like design, functionality, layout, either hurt your conversion rate or gives no uplift at all. So basically 30% of the stuff you're doing is good, and the rest you could have skipped. So it's kind of a depressing quote in a sense, but it just kind of means that you need to be more particular or like detailed with your actual measurements and how you can use data, because that's one of the primary benefits of driving a digital platform. You can actually measure everything compared to retail, where it's really hard to measure what people are actually doing in store, but you can basically see whatever product anybody touches in your e-commerce, you know that if you just handle your data properly.
And frankly, it's also important to recognize too that not 100% of the changes you do are going to work, but there is, you know, just as well, not just as much, but there's a benefit in knowing what doesn't work just as much as there is in what does work, so that you can apply that knowledge as you test further in your A/B testing calendar, we'll say.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right.
So search and recommendations is your area, Joachim.
Yeah, we will talk a lot about e-commerce site search and recommendations today, and especially the value of showing relevant products. But before jumping into that, I wanted to touch on why that actually is important. So for the first, on average, searching shoppers converts 2 to 3 times more than browsing shoppers. The search bar is basically forcing the shopper to focus their attention and deselect other interests for the moment. So serving them relevant products is an easy way to push sales. Secondly, when it comes to human behavior, I find it interesting to note that when we get online, we basically get the attention span of a 5-year-old with an iPad in the hand. You know, if I'm not finding relevant products for the first results page, 75% of the shoppers will simply leave. And at the third, the recommendations, they generally generate somewhere between 5 to 10% of the store's revenue. But since this is mostly on top of existing sales, They are interesting as a source of incremental revenue. All right, enough about background. Let's jump into the personalization as a foundation of what we will be talking about. It's important of showing relevant products, but what does it really mean? Let's have an example. Imagine you're visiting a store looking for a shirt. So when typing this, we see that we are looking at the search results page. We can take one more animation. All right, so this is the search results page. And you see the products as they are presented in a specific order or ranking. And this is usually presented by popularity, merchandised manually to appeal to like everyone, or randomly just matched with the text. But why is this important to really get it right? So we have the 75% attention span iPad kind of analogy. If we take the next animation, we also see how people actually behave, because Google has taught us how to behave when we find results. We're going to click on the first ones because we believe those are the most relevant. So on average, 21% of the shoppers, they click on the first product, and 70% will click on the 8 first products. So no matter if you have 20 products in this results page or this collection page, or if you have 1,000, most people won't even see them and little less engage with them. So the order is hugely important.
Yeah, no, I like the analogy with Google, how they taught us this classical joke, like if you want something to not be found, like hide it on page 2 on Google. It's kind of pretty much the same for e-commerce. Like hide your shitty products below the second fold and you're good to go. Like literally nobody will click on them.
I was going to say, anyone with even a cursory knowledge of SEO has seen this graph before.
Like, yeah, exactly.
The risky thing is when your good products is on the second page. So let's have a look at how you can manage that. So, you know, the solution to ensuring that you're actually showing the relevant products for the right person at the right time is understanding how they are behaving. So how are they engaging with the site? What are they putting in cart? What are they clicking on? What are they skipping? Where do they spend their time? And especially, what do they actually buy? If we marry this background and behavior information with what's actually in store, we can start creating profiles of each and every shopper. So that shopper A, if they are searching for a shirt, they shouldn't be seeing the same thing as shopper B, because their interest and behavior is totally different. So there is a broad range of when we talk about personalization, but in this case, we're talking about individual personalization based on your behavior and interests.
Yeah, so that's kind of the individual personalization. I think a very important point as well in relation to merchandising, before I read out this stuff about Lisen, is it's basically impossible to merchandise for both shoppers at the same time, unless you're using a smart type of recommendation. And that's the problem, because you want to merchandise on an individual level. You want every specific individual that comes to your site to get the perfect experience. That's why your Netflix account knows exactly what you want to watch, because they've got a profile on an individual level for each specific user, and they've got, I don't know how many, but like hundreds of millions, I think, at this point. It's the same with Shopify. So, and that's kind of why it's important to kind of put this data to work that you're actually sitting on when running an e-commerce site.
And it's usually, you know, interesting when you compare it to the offline environment in store. When you have a good clerk, that person is actually interacting with you, seeing the feedback loop. Did you like this? Didn't you like this? And serving you new products based on that input. And it's not that much more complicated, just a bigger scale.
Yeah, exactly. And scalability is definitely the key word here as well. So the one we're going to be looking at today, the case, is they're called Lisen.dk. It's a Danish website, brick and mortar from the beginning. So they got a couple of stores and also e-commerce, which is basically the primary functionality or the primary part of the business today. They've been around for 13, 14 years-ish. They sell multi-brand, so you can see some of the brands on the right side here. And they've got a female audience with the age span of 40+-ish. Of course, they've got a broader audience than that, but that's kind of the primary target. and 100,000 plus customers. So not a huge player, but like a mid-sized e-commerce store.
Exactly. For the Canadians in the audience, I would think something along the lines of like an RW and Co, something like that type of business, or maybe even like Laura. Laura might be a bit bigger, but that kind of audience.
In the case, if you want to back up, thank you. In the case, we've generated a 7.1% revenue uplift through a single A/B test and a single implementation, which calculated to a 26 times ROI on the first year investment. As they grow, this number is going to grow a lot larger as well. If you get personalization right, the more you scale, the better it gets, kind of, both because you get more data to access, but also because the solutions cost in relation to how many customers you're actually serving an individualized personalization to kind of grows exponentially. So I think it's a really interesting case. E-commerce search is going to be the first part. We've broken it down to two parts of the actual design that has been implemented, which we're going to talk about in turn. Search is the first one we're going to be looking at. And what we've done here, this is kind of a before and after image. On the left, you see their preview search. And we've both implemented the Findify algorithm, or AI, the smart search functionality, like the back-end functionality of the site. But while we were doing that, we also wanted to kind of give the search an uplift in design as well. So there's some new functionality with like recommendations for autocomplete, and the product grid looks a little bit better. So there's a couple of things that were implemented. And from an A/B test and methodology standpoint, this kind of would, if you're Netflix, you would definitely want to separate the design and the AI algorithm in two different tests. We were able to kind of separate these two in the test as well when we were segmenting afterwards. But what we really wanted to do was to have as high of a test velocity and as high conversion increase as possible in such a short amount of time as possible. So we decided to kind of merge these two parts of the test, both the design uplift and the algorithm, in one test. So that's the before and after. And within the test, the main KPI for the search specifically is how many people use the search and then converted. Not everybody uses the site search, so that's why the 7.1% revenue uplift isn't 100%, but 100%, like double the users that actually use the search actually converted, which then in turn, if you were talking long-term effect, also translates to more happy customers that will come back to you. They will use the search again. And once again, if we relate back to the kind of 2 to 3 times better conversion among searching users, that if we double that, we're up at 5 to 6 times the conversion rate for searching users. So basically, if we get them to search, that's a really, really good sign that they're likely to convert down the line in their customer funnel.
And what we've seen around that is also that happy searching customers go back and search again because they start using the tool and they continue to. So let's have a look at what we did throughout the search funnel. On the next slide, you'll see that the first thing that the shopper experience is the autocomplete. And as Lucas mentioned, there are some redesigns in this. And the main purpose of the autocomplete is actually not to have people click on the products, engage already there. It's to push them through this funnel of actually engaging with the search. So by starting to type, the system acknowledge that they're looking for something. It gives you terms to actually continue through with. It gives you product recommendations to see that there will be something on the other end, and people push enter to go through there. So already at this level, you want them to the next level. And if we have a look at that, what we've done here is adding easiness of navigation, both through intuitive filters, being able to narrow down your results, and the product order that we talked about earlier in ensuring that you actually see individually relevant products for your sake.
Yeah, and just quick note here, on the left side is the original, and on the right side is the improved version with Findify and the new filters, etc.
Good point. Let's have a look at the results. So throughout this funnel, they started in autocomplete, and nudging them into action, we can see that it increased clicks on search suggestions, by over 90%. So we managed to almost engage the double amount of actually using the search. Then continuing through that journey, we managed to actually transform that increase into a 100% increase of conversion. So people follow through and they actually purchase in the end.
Yeah, so basically this is how any good test should be conducted. If you want to hop back, you kind of try to follow the user in micro conversions along the way. So like the first step is we want them to engage with the search. And then after that, we want them to engage with autocomplete and then find something, a specific product in the search results page. That could also be an interesting KPI that we haven't brought today, but how many actually click the product in the search results page could be interesting to see as well. And then finalizing the purchase is obviously the primary thing that most of us want to do. It's hard to go to the bank with clicks on search, but it is an interesting behavior to measure as well. Next up, as a part of the implementation that generated the 7% revenue uplift, is product recommendations, upsell and cross-sell. And as we mentioned before, typically about 5 to 10% of an e-commerce store's revenue should be generated through recommendations. I personally have clients way higher in that. And I want to take an interesting example that I don't think I've told you before, Joachim, but upsell and recommendations can be like a double-edged sword. I think Apple has been doing it pretty well lately, or for a long time. Like a bad recommendation is if you're browsing an iPad and you click that iPad, add it to cart, oftentimes you'll get a recommendation. Do you want to add this product as well? Adding a second iPad, probably not what the user is looking for. While adding a case for the iPad, that's kind of the good and bad types of recommendation. And even in this case, we're starting even before that, trying to cater to the individual's needs even before adding something to cart. So, but
the algorithm said they liked iPads, Lucas.
Exactly. And there are systems that work that way. And if you kind of work with a bad PIM system and bad tagging, that stuff happens. But a good recommendation is offering the case instead, definitely.
And to build on that, I think it's important that you actually can tailor your recommendations based on your situation and ensure that they are in line with your business objectives and how your business looks like. So I know that this slide is a bit overwhelming, but the intention here is to illustrate how recommendations really are like a big box of Lego. You can basically build anything, intercepting between where should it be seen, how should it run, how should it look like, do I want it broader focused, etc., etc., etc. And you can go into insanity of trying this out. And when doing so, you should go in there with a clear objective, good hypothesis, and then testing it out. So that's what we've done. And having a look at the next slide, we can see the before and after. So what we've done here specifically is transferring recommendations from being quite broad, general category displays, into smarter, tailored recommendations relevant for the individual shopper. And we can see the after picture as well. So by showcasing relevant suggestions based on the current products they're looking for in the cart and already on the starting page, especially for returning shoppers, you can engage with them a lot earlier. You can continue the journey where you stopped off the last time. And as we soon will see when breaking down the effect, engage them a lot more. So once again, the funnel, we can see at the top of the funnel, there is an increased attraction to the product displayed, measured by how many people that are actually clicking on these products. And then following through the entire funnel, we can see at the end, we managed to catch these shoppers by actually making them convert to a much higher degree than earlier.
Yeah, and this is actually, these numbers are like the epitome. English is not my mother tongue, but I think that's a decent word for the thing. But it's like the perfect example of how important it is which products you actually produce. So basically, they had a couple of recommendations before, but we optimized the placement and the algorithm for which products to actually present within these product sliders. So I thought that like a popular for you or combined with these types of things that kind of completes the look for a fashion site, if you may. works really well for fashion, and like 986% more people clicking a product. That is a really, really good result. It tells us that this is serving a way more catered, broader working, personalized recommendations grid on like all levels, basically. And just like the previous result we presented, what we're doing here is kind of drawing up a mini funnel of how many viewed something, how many clicked something, and then finalizing. I think it's oftentimes overlooked as well when talking about A/B testing. People want to A/B test because they want to increase your conversion rate. Well, sure, but you need to start earlier in the funnel by pleasing the user or serving a good customer experience when they're browsing the site for them to actually even consider a purchase. So,
exactly, and this is also one of those situations too where, yes, this is the product of good A/B testing and good recommendations, and it has the intended effect on conversion rate and click-through. But these kinds of results can have effects all over the place. Talking about increased on-site metrics, and if you believe some of the black box stuff about Google SEO, then that there is a positive effect when you see people not leaving the website, not bouncing as much. Same goes for your paid ads when you get that performance. It's just one of those instances where A/B testing really is kind of the universal unifier of your different digital marketing efforts.
Yeah. And back to your previous point, Keith, of actually learning from when it doesn't work. If you don't follow the journey throughout what the shopper actually see and how they behave, you're not going to know what actually failed, at what step could we do better. End state might have been great, but there was something else missing in the chain.
Yeah, and like if we saw only the first parts of the funnel here increase, maybe we got a problem on the product page or on the checkout, because they're actually clicking the product, but they're not adding them to the basket at the same rate. We have a huge drop off there. If that was the case, then we can fix that as well. So that result would also be interesting. So yeah. Yes, actually, I almost forgot this part as well. We spoke a little bit about merchandising. It is, for a lot of companies, still a huge time sink. If you have a large product catalog, it is basically impossible to merchandise this, even like from a physical standpoint, even getting the new products that you have out there, but then merchandising them in a proper manner. So if you can relieve any type of manual labor associated with tagging and recommending, that is a huge plus, because those people that are doing that, you can put their time to a more valuable use where they can work with big data rather than like actually just merchandising stuff that can be handled better from an AI.
Exactly, and it just frees up their time to be more empowered to do more important things than tagging a box in Magento or something like that.
Exactly. All right. So what were the full effects? We've spoken a little bit about them, but these kind of all, the product recommendation sliders, the new search, the new layouts, the filtering, everything had an increase of 6.7% in conversion rate increase. A sub effect was also that we had a 6.2% basket size increase, which is really interesting because as most of you know, if you're going to ship one order already, adding a second order on top of that usually increases the margin on the second order, or you get a better margin on that. So a higher basket size is oftentimes very, very desired. And a 7.1% revenue increase in combination through one simple implementation. I think this test took about like 3-ish weeks to get enough data along with the implementations and stuff. So if you could spend 3 weeks and increase your revenue by 7.1%, well, repeat those 3 weeks as many times as you possibly can, and you'll have a good year. And like manual labor for setting up the A/B tests and the implementations and everything was very light as well. We're talking like 10 hours-ish total setup time. So pretty easy test to conduct. When we broke down the effect though, and I think this is really interesting as well, when we broke down the effect, we ran this cross-device, and a lot of the slides we actually looked at now was on the desktop, which was intended because that's what most people do. When they analyze their site and they look at possible improvements, they oftentimes look at the desktop design just because you're sitting at a desktop when you're working. Very common mistake. I actually do it myself sometimes. But for any fashion site aiming towards women, men too, today, any e-commerce site today basically will have more than 60% of the traffic from mobile devices. And that's where we saw the biggest increase, because in mobile devices, we had almost 14% better conversion in those devices, which mind-boggling. It was better in desktop as well, just not as good in desktop. And we think this is just because you have a smaller screen. The mobile shopping experience is, you spoke about a 5-year-old with an iPad before. Our patience is a lot smaller when it comes to a mobile device when you're searching. So getting your search suggestions correct and serving the proper product recommendations and that whole kind of shebang is definitely more important in the mobile devices.
And getting people through the funnel, as we saw in the test with the sub KPIs of the usage of search suggestions increased, the usage of recommendations even increased further, and just the importance of having these kind of decisions at your fingertip to be able to navigate easily.
Yeah, and speaking anecdotally, and I think you could do a whole nother webinar on the politics of tabs and browsers. But you know, when you have that mobile user, you know, doing the job, going to find a product, it's really important that it is shown quickly, because there is just generally less organization and in my experience, less desire to be accumulating all these tabs. Whereas on Amazon, if you go search whatever you search for and you open your 17 tabs to compare your products, that behavior doesn't seem to exist on mobile. So it just makes this recommendation aspect even that more important, in my opinion.
Yeah, to kind of quote Eminem, you've got one shot, one opportunity, one lifetime. You kind of have to get it right. If you fail to serve the proper products, well, then you're probably screwed. So that was kind of the leasing case. Now, this test in particular that we've just looked at is kind of complex, because in a sense, it's not that hard to do, but I wanted to bring in a few examples of more simple A/B tests that you could basically conduct without any third-party AI, smartness, whatever, just like super simple A/B tests that you can do in an hour, just to give you a wider range of like, what can I test? Because if I were to decide, you should test everything you do on your website, but not everybody has the luxury of unlimited data and unlimited resources. So I think it's important to kind of get the threshold. If you're not testing at a high rate today, just kind of start doing it, and don't start with a like new checkouts, third-party solutions. That is all super interesting, but it might make sense to just do a simple A/B test on something that you can do tomorrow without any hassle. So I wanted to bring up 3 examples of these types of tests. The first one is a test we did for naked.com. They are one of the top 20 quickest growing e-commerce sites in Europe, currently grossing about 200 million American dollars a year. Online fashion store, young audience, mostly women. And what we're testing in this case is the discount prices and how that is fronted, or how that is designed on the website, on any category page, any product page, and just how do we highlight discounted prices, which I think is something that pretty much everybody that runs any type of retail business have thought about this. It's been a science of like, do we make it red? Do we do this? Do we do that? And I think everybody can relate to this. So on the big image to the left, we have the original design. We have a red marked price for the products that are discounted. Usually they've got about 10-15% of their products at a discount rate, so quite a large amount of the assortment. And we've just introduced super simple stuff. Circle with a percentage discount, a kind of banner, I think they're called in English, or ribbon as variation 2. So this is an ABCD test with 3 challenging variations. And in variation 3, we do a bit of a switch where we just swap places. A lot of people actually miss this design when I present this slide. We move the previous price, the ordinary price, to the left, and then the discounted price to the right. And we get quite an interesting result. So 2 of the variations decreased conversion rate by, for this store at least, a decent chunk, 4.2%. That's a lot of millions over a year. While variation 3, that had a bit of a more subtle change, actually increased the conversion rate by 2.5%, translating to, what is that, 50 or 5 million USD a year, I think, and increased revenue from one test. And this test took like literally an hour to put together with cross-device testing and everything associated with it. It's a super simple test. interesting part about this is one of the most common questions I get when working with the conversion rate optimization is like, but you've done a bunch of tests, you know, e-commerce at a decent rate. Couldn't you just kind of tell me what usually works? And sure, I could give you a decent guess, and I would guess variation 1, guaranteed. Keith actually said he liked variation 3. We have kind of I don't know.
Yeah, it's just, to me, it's as someone who's kind of looked a bit into like the pricing psychology aspect, it's really just that left to right. People understand information better left to right, so they see that big price, they see that small price, and then they're off to the cart, man.
Exactly, they've got the information they need. But I would probably recommend, and I think a lot of you in the webinar as well would probably go like, yeah, there's discount prices. We help the users kind of calculate that. They're lazy, they don't want to do math. But in this case, if we just kind of went by our gut feeling, we would have decreased our revenue by a huge chunk from this simple change. And I'm sure you do, most of you who are working with e-commerce today are doing similar changes at basically a weekly basis. And a lot of those, I guarantee you, are generating similar results. You're just not testing it today.
Exactly. A/B testing is shockingly humbling at times.
Very much so. I'm wrong all the time. I'll tell you that much. So that's the first image I wanted to get to. Second one, also a fashion store. I think both of these are very similar with audience. They're the 2 largest online fashion stores in the Nordics with a similar audience. Do you have an example of maybe what this could be for the Canadian audience?
Yeah, like maybe something like Simon's, or I mean H&M's pretty international, but especially the last one, kind of like Simon's, would be a good comparison.
And what we're doing in this test also quite simple, and it's kind of nudging towards what we spoke about with the search, getting people to actually start searching as the primary KPI here. What we've done is on the original before, it was just a static mobile header. It had a search, kind of the hourglass, what's it called, magnifying glass up on the left. That is very common. Most people use that type of header. What we did instead was we introduced on the right here, the furthest right image is before you start scrolling on any browsing behavior type of page. So we're talking product page, category page, start page, anywhere that is not like the checkout or when you're actually finalizing the purchase, you'll have the search bar pre-folded. So it's folded out, and then as soon as you start scrolling, to give you more screen space, it kind of folds up to the header and replaces the logo. And in this test, the KPI is actually not here, but I'm kind of Rain Man with numbers, so I remember it's 11 point something percent. More people clicked the search, and then in actual conversion from the search bar, we had a 6.62% increase.
And this kind of calls back to something that we mentioned before, where if you can get people searching for that specific product and your search functions as intended, that you're going to see that lift. So making that search bar more present, it's just one of those situations where you just continuously learn from doing tests, all over the place.
Yeah, and basically ensuring that the entire journey from intent to end result in actually purchasing just goes smoothly and you're nudged along all the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So interesting test. The third test, it's a bit of a smaller site, not super small. I think like 15 million USD and yearly turnover-ish, selling skincare in the Nordics. Start page is a little bit messy, so there's probably a bunch of stuff that could be done here, but what we're looking at specifically now, this is the start page. If you come as direct traffic or anyhow navigate to the start page, this is what you're presented with. And on the left, original, we have the kind of hero campaign, we got the search, etc., etc. And what we did is on the right side, we've added what we call quick link navigation as one of the first things you'll see on the start page. So we basically extracted the 6 top categories that they sell the most of and want to sell the most of, and just added them as kind of mobile-friendly click buttons, so you can navigate quickly into a subcategory if you know what you're looking for. Kind of a side note for this is most of your direct traffic is returning as well, where oftentimes that's the case. You don't really, if you don't know the brand, you wouldn't just type in their website. That's quite rare. So oftentimes a visitor that comes as direct traffic to the start page kind of knows what they're looking for, or at least has a sense of what they usually buy when they come to the site. Specifically within skincare as well, it's very common to kind of just go and shop your previously bought stuff because you ran out of shampoo or whatever you're using.
Exactly. I really like this test. So seeing that it works, this quick link thing, you can really take this as far as you want to go. You could set up a personalization based on email campaigns, AdWords campaigns, and really kind of target those quick links to be very specific to the audience, which would, I mean, we just talked about how all of our assumptions are incorrect, but I feel pretty good about that one. That if you could have these quick links set up to be relevant to your search queries, either, as I said, through Google Ads, through email, through organic even, that you can have some huge results with this kind of test.
Yeah, and I think we compared also the clicks on these categories, how many people that came to the start page, then went to skincare, etc. It was like 30–40% increase of traffic from the start page that actually reached one of these subcategories. So a lot of people clicked these buttons. And the increase, 8% increase we see here was finalized purchases from people who navigated from the start page along the funnel. So those were the 3 ones. And basically what I want to get through here is test anything. There's both high and small. Don't do button colors though. That's like the most boring test, but most overused like that. Maybe in some cases you need a contrasting color if you need it to really pop, but switching from green to orange, it's not going to revolutionize your business. Try other like simple stuff like the pricing thing. It's just as little code as changing a button color, but it actually brings some type of value that could change the shopping behavior. Or test button colors. It's an easy one as well, just to learn A/B testing, basically.
Hey man, sometimes you want that red price to be the same as that red button. You gotta do it.
You gotta match it. So anyways, to kind of bring it together, we thought we'd summarize what we hope you've learned today. Number 1, life's too short for manual complexities. If you can automate, do so. And that goes all the way through the shopping journey, even down to your logistics. Try to automate as much as possible. That will, in the long term, serve you well if you want to scale. But mainly on-site is what we're referring to, of course. One size doesn't fit all. Like you should be treating your customers or visitors as an individual, if possible, which it is today, because the AI is, or like the smartness of third-party solutions are out there. So you can make sure that a size or the right size is served to every customer. And to do this, you need to let your data make your decisions for you. Leverage your data. You have access to basically all the data about your visitors. So make sure you treat that data. What would they say? Data is the new oil, and it really is true. The most successful digital companies out there are leveraging their data, and that's a huge part why they are successful. And lastly, like Keith said, if A/B testing has taught us anything, is that it's very, very humbling and that we're wrong all the time. So your gut feeling and your experience can be a very good source for ideas or solutions to a problem, but don't just kind of blindly trust it. Like, I've been in the business for 20 years, I know what I'm doing. Sure, you may have, but I guarantee you're wrong at least half of the time. So challenge your gut feeling and keep experimenting.
Yeah, we usually say that Rome wasn't built in a day, and that, you know, a successful implementation is never the end state, but a stepping stone. You're never really done, but you can gain a lot of success in the meantime.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's probably a bunch of different things that could be done to further optimize the things we've implemented now that we can keep experimenting with for Lisen.dk to make an even better experience between search and recommendations. So that was the case, and that was it. I hope we got some questions from our dear audience here. We thought we'd take those now. So Erica, if you got any ones that you want to shoot out, perhaps. I think you may be on mute, Erica.
Yeah, I've sent the questions to you guys. Hi, everybody. We've got some questions from you. Thank you very much for getting involved. So we have a couple. What would you say is the most important, A/B testing or personalization?
Ooh, putting me and Joachim in a pinch here. The personalization master and the A/B testing master, or a master. That's a huge exaggeration. I would say personalization. A personalized shopping experience today is expected by the user. So I think that both A/B testing and personalization are at a point today where it's no longer a nice to have, it's a need to have. If you're not giving the shoppers any type of personalized experience, even today, but even more so the coming 5 years, you will be outran by other people who are doing so. It is not that hard. Sure, getting like the perfect Netflix experience that basically knows what I'm thinking about at any given time of the day, not everybody has that luxury, but getting to a basic or like lowest level of personalization is not hard. So you should be doing that. Otherwise, it's not good. And the same goes for A/B testing as well. If you're changing important functionality on your website, so we're talking like product pages, checkouts, important pages that your users, every user that goes through your shopping journey on your site, if you're changing those, why would you not A/B test? It's like you're doing it to improve the shopper behavior or like shopping experience. So test it. Otherwise, you shouldn't even do it. It's oftentimes better to just leave it if you don't have data on if it actually worked.
I can't add that much to that. Personalization for me is, in the end of the day, about serving relevant experience to the people coming to you. So a store is about meeting your shoppers, and personalization is a great tool for that, while A/B testing is a way of working. Why would I dare to mess up my store with something I don't know if it's good when it's simple to test it? So testing basically all major changes makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and funny thing actually, side note, I oftentimes hear stores that are doing really well say that like we're doing so well, so we don't need to test. I actually had a meeting at 10 this morning with a site that said exactly that. It's like, yeah, we've grown by 40% since last year. We're doing really good. We don't need to test. It's like, yeah, quit while you're ahead. Sure, do that. That's like if your site is really good, that's actually what you should be testing. If you have a site built in '99, well, sure, update the design to a decent level before you start testing because it's outdated. But once your site is not terrible, then that's when you have to A/B test, because the chances are, if you built a good site, that you're just hurting yourself by doing changes that you don't know how they're performed.
I'm totally ready to pick a side, by the way. The question was very specific in saying which one's more important. And this is no offense, Joachim, but I think if you're in a situation where a gun to your head, I'd probably take A/B testing, and that's because if you have strong data, you can build personalizations with your A/B testing. I don't think it goes the other way around. So I think you can get a little bit of both in A/B testing. Obviously, personalization is super important. Don't get me wrong. This is you're never going to have to choose between the two in theory, but just to truly up the controversy level and answer that question, I think I would choose A/B testing.
Oh, I like it. I like it.
I'm sure the audience appreciated that very much. Thank you, Keith, for the drama. And so we're going on to the next question. So what's the most important thing when you're doing A/B testing on an ongoing sort of path of work?
Yeah, sure. I was going to say having the correct methodology, but yeah, sure.
I was going to say having the correct methodology. No, really, it's about, for me personally, it's about kind of building your testing as you go. Like we mentioned before, where like, you know, we might have a test where we see a conversion rate increase or decrease, and maybe the funnel's so long that you actually don't even know where things got better, where things got worse. So when I try to plan out A/B testing, I try to do it as much as I can in a linear fashion, so that you kind of, you know, the answer to all those questions as you go. This of course depends on the needs of the client. If the client wants something right away, maybe a bit sooner. But if you can really kind of build that journey and test linearly through your funnel, you will have, I think, a better, more complete picture of what is happening. And you won't have those questions at the end where you're like, okay, they clicked on the product page, then this happened, this happened. I think, as I said, building out your testing plan in that linear fashion really kind of eliminates some of those variables, we'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. So what's the most important in a good search solution then?
Wow, bunch of things, and we've touched some of them today. I would say at the core, you need excellent language decoding, because that's where it all starts. You need to understand what are people actually looking for, and having a good way to match that with the data you have about your products to be able to show relevant results at the first level. Then you need to ensure that it's actually individually relevant. If you have a lot of products, and most merchants does, you need to show the right products, and you need to ensure that that's automated. But as well, in the end of the day, you need to have control of the experience. You are the master of your kingdom, building out the experience tailored for your merchants, and being able to control the entire experience is crucial.
Great.
That is a really good answer.
Thank you.
Indeed. Well, we do have 3 more questions. I know we're running out of time, but we have one that's, what's the highest increase in conversion rate that you've seen in an A/B testing?
Wow, kind of a, how long is a what do you call it, a string? I don't know. That's huge. I mean,
Yeah.
and I think the more important thing than just kind of one increase is the methodology and process of testing your ideas. I think that's the biggest increase, of going from guessing to knowing. That's the biggest increase. Because if you're doing 10 implementations of new stuff per month, if you manage to test 30% of that or 50% of that, you will all of a sudden know what actually worked, instead of just kind of crossing your fingers and shooting for the stars, you know. And I think that's the biggest win of using your data and A/B testing in particular.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to like say like, oh, this test did 400%, but like there are some tests out there where it is literally, it's shooting fish in a barrel. You know what I mean? Like you feel better about a test where maybe you only increase the conversion rate by 8 or 10%, but it's incredibly relevant. And it's a well-developed website with a lot of revenue, and you know it has like a very big tie towards the bottom line. Whereas like there's some tests that you do and you know they're going to work because the thing before it was just so bad. And that's like an empty victory to me personally.
Yeah, exactly. But still, I think the victory in those types of tests where you kind of know that it's going to work is actually using your process. Because if you came to that particular, like, I know this is going to work. Sure, if you're running 400 A/B tests a year, you can kind of do that if you have this established process. But if you preemptively just assume that you're right, then you've lost the battle already there. And I'm sure both of you, or I know both you and Keith, have done like easy tests that we knew we were going to win, but still verifying that it actually did is the important lesson here.
Being one of these 10 components that you introduce every week into your experience, the biggest uplift we've seen is 29% with the single Findify installation, which is, you know, happy to see. But I also think it's important to then continue to build on that over time, because there's always more you can do to the experience, and there are always smaller increases to get the flow right, and continue to do so.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think just, I know you, when we were discussing this webinar, you were like, I wish the increase would have been higher. And I was like, dude, if you increase the revenue by 7% through 3 weeks of testing, that is a smashing case. I guarantee a lot of the stuff most people are doing on a weekly basis do not generate 7% uplift in revenue. So, but 29%, that is, yes, exactly. You're always shooting for the stars, but that 29%, that's absolutely insane. Anyways, I think we're running out of time, like you said, Erica. For any of you who are still, I see there's a lot of people, pretty much everybody stayed until now. Very happy with that. Thank you so much for attending today. Also, last thing, if any of your, like, if you thought this was interesting and you want to share this with a colleague or your spouse or whoever, send it to your dog for all I know. We're going to send out the recording. And of course, as well, both Findify and Simplify are available if you guys are interested in what we talked about today and you want to know how we can applicate this on your site in particular. maybe you want us to take a look at your site and then have a sit down and see, like, is your site search good enough? Do you have any problems with recommendations or any other part of your site? We'd be happy to take that. Just reach out. You can find us on our websites. Me personally, I'd love it if you added me on LinkedIn if you thought this was interesting. I try to do webinars all the time, so please add me there and we'll send the recording.
And if you have any further questions after this as well, please reach out to us, and thanks for attending.
Yep, no hesitation. Always happy to talk about this type of stuff, A/B testing, any sort of nerdy stuff at all. So same goes for me. Feel free to reach out. Always down to talk.
Yeah. Have a great day, everybody. Thank you for attending. Bye.